There are moments in life when we slow down in front of something, not out of curiosity, and not because we were searching. It is simply a very quiet force, almost invisible, gently pulling us to pause in the middle of a rushing world. If you are here right now, listening to these words, this is not an accident. Some messages do not knock loudly. They arrive softly, like a long breath you have been holding for far too long. Libra is someone who has learned how to keep balance for the world around them. You see both sides of every story. You stand between conflicts. You soften sharp edges before anyone else gets hurt. From an early age, you learned to step back so peace could remain, to stay silent so no one would feel pain, to smile, even when there were feelings inside you had not yet found words for. Over time, endurance became a gentle habit, so gentle that you forgot how much weight you were carrying on your shoulders. It may have been a long time since you last asked yourself what you truly need. You listened to others so much that your inner voice grew quieter, thinner, almost fading. Sleepless nights come without a clear reason. The mind refuses to rest. Mornings arrive with exhaustion already present. Even before the day begins, you still show up. You still fulfill your role. You remain reliable. You are still the one others lean on. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a part of you stepped aside so everything else could stay stable. What makes Libra different is that you do not complain. You do not keep score. You believe that if you try a little harder, endure a little longer, balance will eventually return. But life does not always respond with fairness right away. There were times when your silence was mistaken for being fine, when your sacrifices were seen as normal, and you moved through those days quietly, unnoticed, known only to you and the thoughts that circled endlessly at night. This message arrives at the exact moment you need to remember that your existence is not meant only to calm others. You were not born just to keep everything from falling apart. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be heard and to set down the burdens that were never yours to carry. Some things stayed with you so long because you believed they were responsibility, when in truth, they were simply habits of an old role. If you listen slowly enough, you will notice a very gentle shift taking place. Nothing loud, nothing sudden, just the feeling that you no longer want to keep trying the same way. No longer want to explain everything, no longer want to hold things together at any cost. This is not giving up. It is the sign of a new awareness, one where you begin to understand that real balance does not come from sacrificing yourself, but from living in alignment with your true values. A soft light is beginning to move into the space you left empty for too long. It does not overwhelm you. It only warms you. It reminds you that kindness toward yourself matters just as much as the kindness you offer the world. And as you start listening to your own emotions more honestly, as you allow yourself to slow down by just one breath, everything around you begins to change naturally. Stay with this feeling a little longer. There is no need to understand everything right now. Just allow yourself to be present. Some truths are ready to be named. Some weights are ready to be set down. And as your breathing becomes lighter, as your heart no longer tightens from holding too much, you will realize that the path ahead is no longer about endurance. It is a different movement now, more real, more honest, and much closer to who you have always been from the very beginning. And in that moment, you begin to see more clearly everything you have been carrying for so long. Not with blame, but with a very gentle awareness. You realize that most of those burdens were never officially placed on your shoulders. They grew out of the fear of disappointing others, out of the desire to keep everything calm, out of the habit of thinking about everyone else before thinking about yourself. You became used to being the one people lean on, so used to it that when someone is tired, you step forward. When there is conflict, you stay. When the atmosphere grows heavy, you are the one who tries to soften it. You understand other people's emotions quickly, sometimes even faster than you understand your own. And because of that, you often place your feelings last, as if they can wait, as if they matter less than shared peace. There were periods in your life when you lived in constant calculation, to speak or not to speak, to stay or to leave, to give in one more time or finally protect yourself. Most of the time, you chose silence, not because you lacked a voice, but because you feared that honesty might shatter something fragile. You feared that if you were too truthful, the world around you would never be the same again. Exhaustion did not arrive all at once. It gathered slowly, in sleepless nights, in the emptiness you felt when everything seemed fine on the surface, in moments when you stood in a crowd yet felt very far away. You did not call it suffering. You called it responsibility. You called it maturity. You called it what you were supposed to do. But your body remembered, and your heart remembered everything. You loved through sacrifice. You gave in ways that forgot yourself. You stayed in situations where simply existing there was already enough to drain you, not because you were weak, but because you believed in harmony, in preservation, in not causing pain to anyone else. No one told you that when this lasts too long, you become the one who is quietly wounded the most. Now, as your breathing begins to feel a little lighter, you look back on all of this with different eyes. No bitterness, no self-blame. Just an honest recognition that you carried far more than a sensitive heart was ever meant to hold. And in that recognition, something new begins to form. As if you no longer need to prove that you are good, that you are enough, that you are worthy by enduring pain. Something is shifting in how you feel about yourself. A very quiet permission. Permission to be tired. Permission to not be okay. Permission to lay down the roles you carried for too long under the name of responsibility. And when you allow that to happen, the inner space within you begins to open, slowly, just enough to welcome a different rhythm of life. One where you no longer have to strain yourself to keep the whole world in balance. Within that space, there is a feeling that is both unfamiliar and deeply familiar, as if you are standing at the edge of something that has just ended and something else that is quietly beginning. No noise, no announcement, only a deep settling, where the waves that once knocked you off balance begin to pull back, revealing the solid ground you had been building all along without even realizing it. Some cycles in life do not close with sound, but with a knowing silence. You do not wake up one morning and suddenly see everything changed. The change happens gradually, in the way you react more slowly to things that once hurt you, in the way you stop explaining yourself for emotions that are honest and real. In the moment, you realize that some things which once drained you no longer have the strength to pull you down. That is when an old door closes quietly, without needing to be slammed shut. You did not arrive here by luck. You came through long nights of facing yourself, through disappointments that forced you to re-examine your worth, through very private moments when you chose not to react, not to strike back, not to return harm, even when you could have. You learned that emotional fairness does not come from how others treat you, but from the moment you stop allowing yourself to remain in situations that make your heart tighten. For a long time, you believed that if you loved deeply enough, if you endured long enough, everything would eventually correct itself. But then you understood that love is not the same as tolerating injustice, and that understanding did not come from books or advice, but from your own lived experience. From the times you healed quietly, with no one watching, no applause, only you and your honesty with yourself. You learned to listen to the smallest signals within, the ones you once ignored because you were too busy trying to please the outside world. When a cycle ends, the first thing that appears is not joy, but relief. A feeling like setting down a heavy bag you have carried for far too long. Your shoulders soften, your breathing deepens, and in that moment, you begin to see the light. Not bright, not dramatic, just enough to illuminate the path ahead, just enough to remind you that you are no longer walking in the shadow of old choices. You become more honest with yourself. You no longer accept relationships that cause you to question your own worth. You stop holding on to things that survive only through one-sided sacrifice. You understand now that real balance does not come from standing in the middle of everything, but from standing firmly within yourself. And when you stand firmly, the world around you naturally finds its own order. A new feeling begins to grow, a gentle trust in the future. Not blind faith, but trust built from what you have survived. You know there may still be challenges ahead, but you also know you are no longer who you used to be. You have matured through pain. You have learned to shine through your darkest moments. And that growth is opening the door to a lighter way of living, a brighter one a more honest one, where you no longer need to prove anything, only to show up as who you truly are and allow life to respond with what you genuinely deserve. And as you become more grounded within yourself, something very natural begins to happen. The pressures that once sat heavily on your shoulders, especially the ones tied to money, start to lose their weight. Not because every problem disappears overnight, but because you are no longer living in survival mode. That constant sense of worry, the one that followed you for so long, begins to soften, like the air after a storm has passed, clearer, easier to breathe. For a long time, money was never just numbers to you. It was responsibility, obligation, a quiet fear you never said out loud, that if you were not strong enough, everything around you would collapse. You became used to calculating every step, thinking far ahead, always preparing for the worst. Not because you were pessimistic, but because you were used to handling things alone, to carrying the load yourself, to standing back up whenever instability appeared. Now, that current begins to change direction. You can feel it in very small signs. An opportunity arrives at the right time. A decision you once hesitated over suddenly becomes clear. Support shows up from a place you did not expect. It does not have to be dramatic. It only needs to be enough for you to take a long breath out and realize you are no longer backed into a corner the way you once were. The feeling of it is finally okay does not arrive as celebration, but as a deep settling. You no longer need to control everything so tightly. You no longer feel the need to prove that you can handle it all alone. And it is this release that opens new possibilities. When fear of lack no longer drives you, you begin to see your own value more clearly, and the world starts responding in a different way. Money in this phase is not just material. It represents balance being restored. It reflects your willingness to receive after a long time of only giving. It shows that you no longer see support as weakness, but as a natural part of life. You understand now that you do not have to carry the sky to deserve safety. There is a subtle shift in how you make decisions. You no longer choose from fear, but from a clear understanding of your worth. You begin to say no to agreements that cost you too much. You begin to believe that you deserve fairness. And this inner change becomes the foundation for lightness on the outside. You no longer feel the need to race. You stop comparing your pace to anyone else's. You move more slowly, but more steadily. You know that abundance is not only about how much money you have, but about the peace that comes from knowing you are not alone in this journey. Sometimes, simply not having to strain anymore is its own form of wealth. And when you realize you no longer have to fight by yourself, your heart softens. You allow support to enter. You allow other hands to help carry the weight. This does not make you weaker. It makes you stronger in a way that lasts. You begin forming a new relationship with money, one not built on tension, but on trust, clarity, and self-respect. In this new rhythm of life, everything slows just enough for you to feel it. You are no longer pulled by constant anxiety. You begin to see that, as your inner world stabilizes, the problems that once frightened you lose their power. And within this lightness, there is a warmth, something real, reminding you that life is not only about surviving, but about being supported, being met, and continuing forward with a gentle trust that you are moving in the right direction. And as your breathing slows, you begin to touch a lesson that is both very old and very new. A lesson Libra often overlooks, simply because you are so used to standing on the side of giving. You give your time, you give your listening, you give your patience, and even the quiet spaces that were meant only for you. You give with the belief that if everyone around you is okay, then you will be okay too. But rarely do you stop to ask what you are receiving in return, or whether you are even allowing yourself to receive at all. There is a very subtle hesitation in the way you accept love. When someone offers help, you quickly say you are fine. When care is shown, you smile and change the subject. When you're tired, you tell yourself you can endure a little longer. Not because you do not need rest, but because you are used to being strong. You fear that if you receive too much, you will become a burden. You fear that if you rest, everything you worked so hard to hold together will fall out of place. But life is whispering something very different to you now. That being loved is not a reward, it is a basic right. That being supported does not make you less valuable, It simply reminds you that you were never meant to live alone, and that rest is not quitting. It is how you continue living in a fuller, more honest way. When you begin to allow yourself to receive, the first changes happen quietly. You no longer feel guilty for needing help. You stop over-explaining the boundaries you are just learning to honor. You begin to see that some people choose to stay not because of how much you give them, but because they truly value who you are. And within that sense of being valued, relationships begin to breathe. They loosen, they soften. They no longer strain under one-sided sacrifice. Balance returns, not through silent compromise, but through clarity. Clarity about your needs, clarity about your emotions, clarity about how much you can give and where you need to stop. When you no longer drain yourself to keep everyone satisfied, you have more energy for what truly matters. Your presence becomes fuller, warmer, no longer carrying hidden exhaustion beneath the surface. There is a quiet beauty in the way Libra learns to receive, a beauty rooted in softness, not weakness, in gratitude without emotional debt, in love that is given and received with mutual respect. You begin to feel safer in relationships because you are no longer responsible for holding everything together. Each person carries their own part, and so do you. As your energy stops being depleted, your life naturally slows in a way that feels kind. You notice small joys more clearly, a peaceful morning, a conversation that does not require effort, a moment where you allow yourself to rest without judgment. These moments may seem simple, but they are the foundation of a healthier life, one where you are not just surviving, but truly living. And within this gentle permission, you realize you no longer need to prove your worth through sacrifice. You are already whole, simply by being yourself. When you open your heart to receive, the world does not take from you. It returns what you forgot you were allowed to have. The balance you have always searched for is no longer somewhere outside of you. It is forming in the way you treat yourself, little by little, honestly, and with lasting strength. And as you begin to live more in rhythm with yourself, something very subtle slowly comes into view. Your light becomes clearer than before, not because you're trying to shine, but because you are no longer hiding it. And in that moment, you start to realize that not every presence around you comes from good intention. Some eyes follow you not out of admiration, but out of comparison. Some words sound like care, yet underneath carry a desire to guide you, to control you, or to keep you in a familiar place where others feel more secure. You once believed that if you were kind enough, patient enough, everything would naturally adjust. But the deeper you step into your truth, the more clearly you feel what is no longer in harmony. Some people are not comfortable with the version of you that is emerging now. They miss the version of you who was always willing to sacrifice, always willing to stay, always listening without asking for anything in return. And when you begin to change, when you speak your needs, when you set boundaries, they feel unsettled. Not because you are wrong, but because you no longer fit the role they once relied on. Advice begins to appear more often, but it no longer feels gentle. It is wrapped in logic, in assumed concern, in words that sound reasonable, yet cause your body to tighten. You begin to notice that your intuition is working very clearly now. Your body reacts before your mind has time to analyze. A heaviness in the chest, a fatigue after certain conversations, a quiet sense that something is off, even when everything looks polite and proper on the surface. What matters most is that you no longer ignore these signals. You stop convincing yourself that you are overthinking. You stop forcing yourself to understand everyone. You begin to trust what you feel, and that trust becomes a very natural form of protection. Not through confrontation, not through criticism, but through just enough distance. Distance that lets you breathe. Distance that keeps you from being pulled into expectations that are not yours to carry. A quiet reordering is taking place. You do not need to do anything. No proving, no exposing. Relationships not rooted in real respect begin to reveal themselves when you stop sacrificing. Those who were used to taking more than they gave feel uncomfortable when you no longer respond as before. And in that discomfort, truth reveals itself more clearly than any explanation ever could. You begin to feel lighter when you are no longer responsible for other people's emotions. You understand that everyone has their own journey, and you no longer need to carry their inner work for them. Your peace no longer depends on whether someone else is satisfied. It comes from alignment between what you feel and what you choose. Some relationships will drift away, quietly, without drama, simply no longer moving at the same pace. And others will appear or remain, but on an entirely different foundation. A foundation of respect, of freedom, of no one having to lose themselves to keep the other. You are no longer afraid of this loss, because you understand that what leaves is making space for what fits better. Through all of these movements, a deep sense of stability is forming inside you, a trust that you no longer need to worry about fairness. When you live honestly, when you stop acting from fear, natural order restores itself. What is not sincere cannot stand in the light for long, and you do not need to judge. Life has its own way. You continue forward with a new clarity. Your heart is not closed, but it is not wide open either. You do not distrust everything, yet you are sensitive enough to know where you can rest. And in this very conscious choosing, you feel yourself moving deeper into a different kind of journey, one where things are clearer, lighter, and you no longer carry shadows that were never yours to begin with. And in that perfectly measured silence, a very gentle truth begins to reveal itself. Love, for you, has never been something shallow. You love with presence, with the desire to build, with the longing to protect what matters. And yet, because of that very depth, there were times when you stayed too long in relationships that were not ready to grow alongside you. Not because love was missing, but because each of you was moving at a different rhythm of life. As old chapters quietly close within you, without noise, without pulling back, you begin to understand that love cannot fully bloom on the foundation of one-sided sacrifice. Some connections once felt deep, familiar, almost inseparable, yet they were built on a version of you who was constantly enduring. And when you are no longer that person, the truth becomes unmistakably clear, not to cause more pain, but to set you free. True love does not rush toward you. It waits. It waits until you're ready. Until you release the memories that make your heart tighten each time they surface. Until you stop hoping that someone will change simply because you love hard enough. When you close old doors with understanding, without resentment, without regret, without needing a final explanation, a new space opens. Wide enough for something healthy to enter. It may be someone new, arriving gently, without disrupting your life, without asking you to trade your steady rhythm for emotional chaos. They do not require you to prove your worth. They do not expect you to bridge the gaps within them. With this person, you get to be yourself. Whole, ungrounded, free from the constant effort of keeping balance for two. Their presence feels like natural companionship, two people walking together, neither pulling, neither dragging the other forward. Or perhaps, from a completely different turn, someone familiar appears again, not with old promises, but with changed energy. They no longer ask you to wait, to over-understand, to sacrifice yourself again. You sense their growth, not in words, but in how they listen, how they respect the boundaries you have learned to hold. And that difference allows you to see everything with new eyes. Either way, the message is clear. You are no longer here to rescue anyone. You are not responsible for healing wounds others are not ready to face. Love is not a project that needs fixing. It is not a place where you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's life. When love is right, it will never ask you to trade the peace you worked so hard to reclaim. You begin to experience safety in a new way, not through attachment, but through ease. You speak your truth without fear of causing harm. You stay quiet without being misunderstood. You show up as yourself on tired days without apologizing for it. This kind of love does not take away your freedom. It expands it. And within that expansion, a beautiful truth settles in. You no longer seek love to fill a void. You enter love to share the fullness you have already built. You arrive with clarity, with a heart that has learned to love itself first. No old scripts, no familiar roles, just two people meeting at the right time with deep respect for each other's journey. when you reach this place, you understand that love does not come to complete you, but to walk beside you in your most authentic form. And once this truth is touched, it no longer creates confusion. It stays quiet, steady, a gentle reminder that you deserve to be loved in the right way. And this time, you will recognize it from the very beginning. And then one morning, you wake up feeling something different. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because inside, you are calmer. You realize you are more sensitive to truth now, no longer needing to analyze everything to know what feels right for you. Your body knows before your mind speaks. Your heart no longer stays silent when something is off. This sensitivity does not make you weaker. It makes you more awake, more honest, more alive than ever before. You are no longer easily pulled into stories that do not belong to you. Vague words, unspoken expectations, pressures disguised as concern no longer reach you the way they once did. Not because you have become cold, but because you have learned how to stand firmly inside your own emotions. You no longer feel the need to over-explain what you choose and what you refuse. You understand now that boundaries are not walls. They are the space you need to breathe. A very important shift has taken place within you. You no longer feel guilty for protecting yourself. You no longer apologize for needing time, for needing quiet, for needing respect. You begin to see clearly that saying no does not make you a bad person, and choosing yourself does not make you selfish. It is, in fact, the only way to live a life that does not betray who you are. Letting go no longer feels like loss. It feels like clearing out a room that was once filled with familiar things you no longer need. As you set them down, space opens, light enters, and within that space, what truly belongs finally has room to arrive. Healthier relationships, better aligned opportunities, a gentler rhythm of life, one that does not ask you to trade peace for attachment. You no longer walk into the future carrying tension. You move forward with a deep trust that you are strong enough to stop fighting all the time. This new cycle does not begin with proving yourself. It does not begin with more sacrifice. It begins with inner peace, with the safety of being at home in your own body, with allowing life to unfold without trying to control every detail. There may still be turns ahead. There may still be challenges, but you are no longer who you used to be. You carry a maturity shaped by years of endurance, by standing back up in silence, by lessons that were never easy. And that maturity becomes the foundation for a different kind of life. One where you no longer exist to please the world, but live to honor yourself. When everything settles, you realize you no longer need to run. You no longer need to balance the entire world. You only need to stand where you are, fully, honestly, at peace. And from that place, life begins to meet you with what truly matches you, quietly, without display, but deep enough for you to know that this journey, at last, has brought you exactly where you belong.